Hi everybody, welcome to this evening's Twilight, Spring into Spring. Thank you for all coming. Hopefully you've got your cakes, or you've had your cakes. If you didn't know there were cakes, there are cakes, with mini eggs on. For all of those of you at home, or wherever you might be watching or joining us, if you want to feel like you're involved a bit more, not just yet, but after Andy's finished doing his little bit, you might want to rush off and get yourself a little cake with some eggs on. It might make you feel a bit more part of the proceedings, because everybody here has kind of just enjoyed a lovely cake with eggs on, which we're not allowed to have, sadly. So I've been told. Okay, so tonight we've got a couple of sessions. I'm going to lead one around getting kind of nature indoors a bit more and bringing back a bit of love for the nature table. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about outdoors. He's called it Can You Dig It, for all those of you who are kind of 90s kids out there. And he's going to kind of draw the links between outdoor learning, digging and the curriculum for you. So I'm Matthew, this is Andy, and I'm going to hand it over to Andy for the first part of tonight's session. I hope you enjoy it all.
Very good. Right, super, we will get started. So yeah, we're going to be talking all about digging and growing and planting and gardening and all of that sort of thing. I think quite often I hear people talk about things like that idea of what rich activities can you do that cover all sorts of different bases in terms of the curriculum, in terms of all of those different areas of learning. And inside, people talk about baking. Baking is a great activity, isn't it? Inside, it covers all sorts of things from physical experiences to knowledge and understanding of the world, seeing changes and patterns and all kinds of opportunities there in terms of mathematics and language. Really, in terms of an outdoor equivalent, I think digging and growing and gardening actually is a very good outdoor equivalent of that. And I don't think we often see it as such. And I think we really should. I think we should really raise it up as something that offers such rich potential. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of the different possibilities with you in terms of the 7 areas of learning, and what it is that we would be covering when we engage with growing and gardening with our youngest children. Okay, so let's start. Let's start with communication and language. Communication and language, of course, is a hot topic at the moment. You don't go very far within the new EYFS framework without stumbling across certain phrases around speech and talk, around the importance of talk, the importance of back and forth interactions. Well, digging, growing, gardening, planning a space where we're going to look after a vegetable patch perhaps provides a rich opportunities for talk. What is it that we're going to grow? What is it that our children enjoy eating? What vegetables might they enjoy eating? What will we need the vegetables for? What are we going to cook with them? When we get to the end of this period of time where we've got something that we're harvesting, what is it that we're going to do with those vegetables? So that idea of planning things, thinking things through, talking about what foods we like, talking about actually what ingredients we are needing for cooking and so on. There are clear links there. What else? Well, let's stick with the prime areas. Let's go on to personal, social and emotional development. Again, there are lots of links. So when we're thinking about things like, for example, being healthy, that idea of well-being, being outside, that idea of being outside in the open air, really enjoying being out there with other people, enjoying that time together. Often we find that actually when people spend time together outdoors like that, we have a higher level of well-being. That in itself, of course, is important. Children who have a high level of well-being generally are in the right place for learning. They're absolutely in that right place for learning. So not to be underestimated. Alongside that, of course, you've got all of that spending time together and working together, collaborating, sharing, taking turns. Who's going to do which job in terms of the planting and the growing, the sowing of the seeds, all of that sort of thing. What else? Well, physical development, that's a big one, isn't it? When we're talking about gardening and growing, physical development, that's a major one, isn't it? I think when we think about digging and growing outside, we have to consider what resources and materials we are offering the children. So the tools that we're giving the children to dig with and to garden with and to plant things with, they've really got to be as robust as possible. They've got to feel like the real things as much as possible. So don't try and take sort of plastic scoops or plastic spades from your inside area and try to dig and grow outside using all of those sorts of things, because they won't last and they don't tend to work. But offer something that's bigger and more physically challenging and more like a real sort of spade really, but a mini version of it. And you're much more likely to get that physical challenge, that sort of physical engagement. Of course, again, we're talking about the prime areas. Children need to develop those physical skills. That opportunity to dig and also to develop those gross motor movements as they're doing that, moving with control, that is important. To develop that core strength, all of that is important. And then, of course, alongside that, you've got the fine motor movements as well that are involved in growing, in sowing seeds, in looking after plants. You've got all those careful movements as well. So already, lots within the prime areas. What else? Well, what about mathematics? There's lots of maths there. Of course there is. Lots of mathematics there. You know, we're talking about the size of space that we've got. Are we going to have enough space to be able to plant what it is that we're looking to plant? Are we going to have enough space there for a row of carrots, perhaps, or a row of potatoes? How much space are those plants going to need around them? So we're talking about estimating. We're talking about predicting. Potentially we could be talking about measuring as well, when you think about actually these seeds, when we read the instructions on the back, they need to be so far apart. They need to be 10 centimetres apart. Well, what does 10 centimetres look like? Let's have a look at that. How deep do we need to plant those seeds? Have we got something so that we can see how deep it's going to be? Can we measure it? Can we go that far deep into the ground? How many seeds are we putting in at a time? So we're starting to separate them out. We're starting to be really carefully think about one seed at a time into each of those holes. That really taking care and consideration over something, all of that, of course, is important. Looking after something is important. Okay, so in terms of mathematics, we've got predicting, we've got measuring, we've got problem solving also, which is important, isn't it? That idea of working things out. Have we got enough space? What are we going to use for this particular vegetable to grow up? So if you're planting peas, for example, you've put the pea seeds in, you need something for it to grow up. What are we going to be using for it to grow up? What will that look like? It will need to be something strong enough to support the plant, but at the same time, it will also need to be something that we can easily get hold of. So what will we be using? So children might suggest that we might use sticks, and of course that's a great suggestion. How long, how tall, how big do the sticks need to be? All of those discussions, I think, are important. This, of course, what we're talking about here is meaningful mathematics. Okay? Now, where maths tends to fall flat, and has done historically, is when young children don't see maths as meaningful. When we don't see something as meaningful, when we don't see learning as meaningful, we tend to, as human beings, we tend to switch off pretty quickly. If it's not really something that really matters, then we switch off. And maths tends to be one of those areas where, if we're not careful, it doesn't seem meaningful. And yet actually, through growing vegetables, through growing from seed, and really exploring different heights, and exploring how we sow those seeds, using all of that mathematical potential, it makes it very much meaningful. Okay. What else? Well, what about understanding the world? Understanding the world, where there are rich possibilities for understanding the world. Of course there are. Very much scientific, isn't it? That idea of growing things, looking after them, seeing those changes over time. What do these plants need? Okay, so lots of questions going to be asked as part of growing, whether we're growing carrots or peas or potatoes or whatever we're going to grow. Lots of conversations about what does it need? How much water is the right amount of water? Is this weather going to be the right sort of weather for these seeds to grow, do we think? Has it been wet enough? Has the sun been shining? What is it that they need? Okay. We're also going to be starting to know through our conversations about actually what might happen to those seeds. That some, of course, may not grow, some may not be successful. What's going to get in the way of that? Okay, so do birds feed on the seeds, for example? Is that going to happen? Are some not going to grow for different reasons? What might they be? Now, they are quite complex discussions, quite complex conversations to have with young children, I think. And I think we should have those sorts of conversations, those sorts of discussions. It's important that we challenge children through having those conversations about growing things and about looking after our plants. So understanding the world around us, lots of rich possibilities through growing, through gardening, through looking after plants, but also through growing vegetables as well. What else? Well, what about expressive arts and design? This is something that Matthew is going to be talking a little bit more about later on, so I'm not going to go too far into this. But certainly observational drawing with the things that you have been growing, I think actually makes perfect sense. So whether we're growing sunflowers, for example, and talking about how tall those sunflowers are, but then harvesting the sunflower heads in the autumn, so that we can look really closely at the sunflower heads. We can talk about the seeds and the patterns. We can talk about that and then we can sketch it, we can draw it, we can really look carefully and explore the lines in terms of what it is that we are creating there. Okay, again, those conversations and discussions, they're the crucial part there around what it is that we're creating. So expressive arts and design. That's not an obvious fit, of course, but actually, when we think about it, growing things, looking after plants, selecting from nature all sorts of materials provides a rich context for all sorts of expressive art, all sorts of opportunities to look closely at things, to provide that observational drawing opportunity. So is that something that you currently do? I think is a question that's well worth asking. Alongside that, it's well worth thinking about, because now is a perfect time to be planning all of this, I think. Alongside all of that, I think it's important to think about transition. If you think about from now until when we have harvest time, that actually spans 2 school years, doesn't it? That of course from now, of course you've got this school year, and if you're in reception, if you're planting things now, many of the things, not all of the things that you will then grow, but many things may actually be harvested best in the autumn term, not in the summer term. Now, that's not necessarily a negative. I think it's important to think about this. Are there some things that you could plant with your children now in reception that you are then going to talk to your Key Stage 1 team about in terms of what it is I could plant so that when those children are in year 1, they can harvest them? And that actually that might fit with something they are going to do in year 1, perhaps. So it might be something to do with size and scale and measurement. So it might be about planting pumpkins, for example, that are really great big pumpkins, so that they could be harvested actually when those children are in year 1. They can think back to the whole planting and growing process, but actually it starts off a whole new way of talking and thinking mathematically when those children are in year 1, perhaps. Or you could look at it, if you've got nursery and reception children, you could think, well actually what are we going to plant for those nursery children that we can then harvest when they are in reception in the autumn term, so that we can think back to that time when we planted them. Certainly something to think about. So a mix of different things that you will harvest this term, okay, or in the summer term rather, and other things that actually will need to be need longer to grow that you will harvest actually in the autumn term. Okay, certainly lots to think about. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. I hope it's given you lots to think about. There's certainly lots there. When we think about digging, planting, growing, even just that physical experience of digging is really important for young children to develop those physical skills. Okay, so really go for it, embrace it, have a go at it. If you haven't done it before, it's a really rich opportunity for learning. And let us know how you get on with it. You know, do feel free to let us know here at Early Exits how you get on. It would be great to hear from you. So, yeah, get in touch with us on social media. Send us photographs of the tall sunflowers you've grown or the huge vegetables that you've managed to grow or whatever you've managed to do. It would be great to hear from you. All right. So, yeah, thank you very much for joining us for our session. We're going to have a pause now, and what we're going to do is we are going to give you some time to have a bit of an explore. A bit of a wander around the centre for those of you who are here. Okay, those of you who are at home, you can have a wander around at home if you like. But those of you who are here at the centre, have a wander around the centre, have a bit of an explore. What we're then going to do is we're going to come back a little bit later on for a session from Matthew all about the nature table and all the possibilities of the nature table. All right, okay, so we'll see you shortly. Everybody back in there. You might just want to spin yourself round. We're over here now, just keep guessing.
Oh, that was so small. Yeah, I think so. Okay. So welcome back everybody who's watching from their homes or schools or wherever you might be. And thank you for coming back. So I'm Matthew. I'm just going to talk you through some thoughts on bringing a bit of the natural world indoors, and I'll just say how I kind of came to thinking about it in a moment. But just for those of you at home, if you're thinking, I like the sound of those cakes, I'd like to recreate something a bit like it, then this is what they were eating, this is what they've eaten. So lots of lovely icing, fairy, is it a fairy cake? Fairy, yeah. And then 3 little mini eggs. So if you're thinking I'd like to create that, recreate that, and have that being at the centre experience, then there you go. Or maybe next time you might think, actually, I fancy not having to do that myself. I might come to the centre and you could enjoy the cakes with us. Okay, so when I was thinking about putting something together tonight, it reminded me of a conversation I had with a colleague. And she'd been listening to the radio, and on the radio they were talking about the new Oxford Junior Dictionary. And in the new Oxford Junior Dictionary, they'd said they'd taken out words like catkin and bluebell, and put in words like USB and mouse, not the mouse, but the mouse, because children weren't kind of engaging, or they weren't using that kind of language, they weren't looking for that kind of language. And she felt horrified as a reception teacher, thought, that feels really sad to me. and she always used to have a nature table, but for whatever reason, and it often happens, doesn't it? You start doing something, you hear something, you do it for a little while, and for whatever reason, you kind of stop doing it. And she thought, I stopped doing the nature table. Maybe I should bring the nature table back. Kind of inspired by that thought that all these children are kind of engaging with nature, which is why they're taking it out of the Oxford Junior Dictionary. So she did, which made me think maybe we should have something similar at the centre. So this is what this is all about tonight. I've got, I'm going to say a word or two about nature tables and why I think they're great, and how actually with the new revised EYFS, you'll notice, I'm sure, within physical development, I think it is, there's a reference to drawing now, and then within understanding of the world, there's reference to observational drawing. So it's something that we're being asked to judge children's attainment about by the end of their time with us in reception. So we need to think about a way of doing that in an appropriate manner. So it seems to me something a bit like an nature table might be a good way to do that in an appropriate manner, but also with a mind to mastery, which is one of those things that we're also being asked to kind of focus on and thinking about allowing children to explore things with a real depth rather than the kind of surface level stuff. And a nature table can allow us to give children the opportunity to kind of return to things and get mastery over the thing that they're doing, which will be around looking at the detail and in turn kind of and in time kind of refining their kind of drawing and their observational drawing technique. So just a few things. Oh, and the other thing that I'm just going to share with you tonight is a couple of books that link really nicely with the kind of idea of spring and the indoors out, which I think are fab. And so I'm going to read you a poem from one of them. And the one that I'm going to read you a poem from is called I Am the Seed That Grew the Tree. And that's a National Trust book. We have a couple of copies here tonight if you're interested. It feels a little bit pricey, £25. But when you kind of think there's a poem a day, 365 poems, do the maths, 6p a poem, which I think is pretty reasonable, really, in the end. But you'll make your own mind up about that. And I've got another kind of fiction book that I've kind of spotted as well that you may or may not be familiar with, called Goodbye Winter, Hello Spring, which I just think is lovely. And there's some fab illustrations in there as well, which I'll show you in a moment. Nature table wise, I think if you kind of think of it in terms of a bit like your continuous improvement and your enhancements, have a bit of the both. So this, for those of you from the 1980s, so I've got a fan down here from the 1980s, I'm reminded of David Bellamy, so I understand that I'm going flying over lots of your heads. So some of you maybe at home might be thinking, oh, David Bellamy, I remember him, yeah, lovely, big beard, and he had a very particular way of talking. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it, I'm sure there's lots of YouTube clips of David Bellamy. He was like a botanist? Thinking botanist. So yes, think of your nature table with the kind of continuous provision and enhancements in mind. So I'm thinking plants like this and the kind of succulents can be there all the time. If you kind of choose plants that are going to flower, then they're going to evolve over time. So they're kind of doing a job for you in the background, so they're changing just naturally, as nature will, over the time that they're kind of with you, and the children can be drawn to them, you can draw their attention to it as the kind of seasons move. And one of the things you can talk about is, over the winter time they kind of go dormant, but in the spring they start to come to life again. So choosing some plants that have that kind of flower and don't, you've got that kind of contrast. And it's that thing, isn't it, just to get in our heads that one of the things we're being asked to think about as we kind of think about our curriculum at the moment is the best curricula are the ones that lighten the pedagogical load. So we want to try and find ways that make our life as easy as possible. And I think it's having something a bit like this, where you've got your kind of continuous bit that's just taking care of things behind the scenes, lightens your pedagogical load. Because you're not kind of thinking all the time, what I'm going to put on the nature table, what I'm going to put on the nature table. Hopefully that will happen because you're drawing the children's attention to nature, so the seasonal elements will happen, they'll come to you. And then you can have a few well-chosen plants that will kind of evolve and grow quite naturally behind the scenes. They'll flower, the flowers will die, and then they'll go dormant, and then they'll come back and you can draw the children's attention to that. So there's that continuous element that you want to have there, and then you can enhance it seasonally. The children can engage with that, so if they find something out and around about, whether it's kind of catkins or pussy willow or whatever it might be, a tulip or a daffodil that they found, that's already been picked, obviously, from home or the like. And you can add that to your nature table, and then it can evolve through the seasons. And then we're getting into that mindset of we don't have to do the seasons just kind of happen. And it's for us just to notice them with the children. And I think that's, if you didn't take anything else away from tonight, take that away. That let's see if we can get back into let's experience the seasons with the children, let's notice the seasons with the children. Don't feel like you have to do it. Again, it's about lightening that pedagogical load. So if we just draw the children's attention to it, then it kind of makes everything feel a little bit more manageable. So then from an observational drawing point of view, obviously you're going to want to add maybe a magnifying glass or two to kind of draw children's attention to it and get them looking more closely at the detail. Because actually the way that we encourage children to develop their observational drawing skills is a lot about looking more closely at the detail and getting them to refine their work. And if you've never seen it, there's a really great clip on, probably on YouTube, that's called Austin's Butterfly. Some of you might be familiar with it, and it just kind of shows how the little boy, that's all right, yay, I like that, cheer me on. It's a really nice example of a little boy has a go at doing a butterfly, and then just with his friends and the teacher, he just refines his work as they look at his butterfly compared to the butterfly that he's trying to draw over time. Over quite a short period of time. Have you thought about that? Look at that wing there, look at that detail there. And he comes back after about 4 or 5 more attempts. And it's just an amazing butterfly. It's not like he's a particularly skillful artist or anything. It's not necessarily that it's something that other children can't do. He hasn't got a particular talent, that's what I'm trying to say. It's just that he's been kind of taught how to do it. Yes, Austin's Butterfly it's called, if you haven't seen that. So yes, and then it's a case of leaving out then kind of a range of nice paper, the best quality you can get really, because the idea is not really that you're going to be going to it all the time. It's something that the children will kind of do when the moment strikes, but we want to offer them something that says to them, this is something that's important, this is something that we value, and we value your attempt, so we're going to give you the best that we possibly can. So high quality drawing paper, and then like a range of high quality pencils. So you've got that, trying to draw something with like a 6H pencil. I'm not saying that you would try with a 6H pencil, but sometimes it's those little details that actually make it work for the children. So much easier to have a go with your 2Bs, your 4Bs, your 6Bs, and you can get into kind of shading, and we can have those conversations with the children. So offer them the best quality that we can, and when you've got a moment, because we've lightened our pedagogical load, we can be alongside them, and we can be talking to them about the details that they've kind of already got, but maybe missed out, and could refine their work in time. So yes, if you haven't already, then that's your call out for reinstating your nature table and let it kind of take a bit of that load from you, chugging away in the background, supporting the children to kind of develop mastery of their kind of observational drawing and their drawing in a very natural way, but it's also making that connection to the natural world for them, which there is, which any of you listened to the last time we did one of these, just before Christmas, drew your attention to this book, Everyday Nature. And it kind of came about because there's a kind of sense that lots of children and adults are becoming a bit disconnected from nature. And what we need to do is just start noticing a bit more with them. So this book is great because it gives you something every day of the year to notice. And it's something that will kind of be around on that day. So for example, where are we today? 8th of March. So on the 8th of March it says notice violence out and round about. So it might not be something that you can do at your setting, but it's something you can just talk to the children about, draw their attention to, and there's something for every single day of the year, which I think is a lovely idea. And I mentioned a little bit earlier this fab book, which kind of connects up really nicely as well. They're both from the National Trust, so I mentioned it earlier. I am the seed that grew the tree, and again, so it's a poem for every day, connecting to nature, that you could potentially leave out on your nature table along with your everyday nature book. Up to you. And so, what did I say? 8th of March. Is it the 8th of March? Yes, 8th of March, thank you. So we've got, we're keeping it high level here, so we've got a William Blake poem on the 8th of March here for you, and it's called Spring Song, so I'll just share that with you. So it goes like this. Spring is coming, birdies build your nest, weave together straw and feather, doing each your best. Spring is coming, flowers are coming too, pansies, lilies, daffodillies now are coming through. Spring is coming, all around is fair, shimmer and quiver on the river, joys everywhere. So yeah, William Blake. So, and there's a really nice foreword from the people that put the book together as well, just talking about how you might use the book with the children, how you might use it yourself. So there's kind of things about just saying, obviously it's quite a big book, might feel a bit daunting, maybe just want to put it on the shelf and look at it to start off with. And then maybe in time just kind of look at the poems one a day or however you choose to do it. And like I said, 6p a poem, it's a bargain. Okay, so I just wanted to flag that up for you. And last but not least, just to round things up, there's another nice book that I just wanted to draw your attention to, which is by a chap called Kenneth Pack. And he's done, there's a whole kind of series that connected to the seasons. So he's got Goodbye Summer, Hello Autumn, Goodbye Autumn, Hello Winter. And I just think the illustrations are kind of unusual. He's an American author, but unusually he talks about autumn rather than fall, so that kind of works for us here in the UK. I just wanted to kind of show you, so it kind of starts off with Hello Winter Night. I'm feeling like I'm back in the classroom all of a sudden. Hello Winter Night. And then there's a page right in the middle in the depths of winter here that's got no text but just illustrations, which I think is fun. And then it kind of moves all the way through winter, 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 and everything about winter. And then we kind of move into spring, and we get Hello Winter Thaw, Hello New Leaves, Hello Budding Flowers, Hello Bright Blue Pond, and then we get Goodbye Winter, Hello Spring. Ah, somebody went, oh, for those of you at home, somebody went, oh, that's nice. So that's the effect we're having here. So all the more reason next time to come here. Thanks for that. We've had cheers and ahs. You can't say fairer than that. Okay, so that's Goodbye Winter, Hello Spring by Kenneth Pack. And like I said, he's done Goodbye Summer, Hello Autumn, and Goodbye Autumn, Hello Winter as well. And that's about it from me for tonight. Hopefully that's enjoyable. And good luck with your next tables. If you haven't got one, bring it back. If you have got one, give it a bit of extra love. So yeah, thank you for listening, and thank you for listening at home as well, and hopefully you're going to go away now and make yourself a lovely fairy cake, lots of icing, at least 3 mini eggs, and who needs an excuse to go and buy mini eggs if we're honest. See you again next time. Ali's just going to say a few things to round things off.
Yeah, fab. Yeah, just to say thank you very much. Those of you who are here, thank you very much for coming along, for exploring with us. The two presentations that we've had looking at, of course, gardening and growing and all of the rich possibilities there, and then of course also the nature table too. I think what comes across loud and clear is the holistic nature of learning in the EYFS. We're not just talking about mathematics in isolation. We're not just talking about literacy in isolation. We're not talking about any of those areas of learning in isolation. We're talking about two rich opportunities, from the nature table to digging and growing and gardening, that actually cover all sorts of possibilities, and very much that idea of lightening that pedagogical load, where you're thinking about that coverage through those broad, rich experiences. So yeah, thank you ever so much for joining us. Those of you who are here at the centre, we are still very much open, so do feel free to have a good explore, feel free to have a good wander around our environment, go and take photographs if you would like to, have a really good explore. The sale room is open as well, go and have an explore in there too. The resource centre is that way, go and have a bit of an explore in the resource centre too. Lots of beautiful books that link very much to the sorts of things that we've been talking about today, whether it be the books that Matthew was talking about, or books that relate to growing and digging and gardening too. All right, so lots to explore. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody, and all the very best, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.